Hi everyone, Jeremy. I recently reviewed the Samsung A35 and the Samsung A55. These are two smartphones that can be found at 400 and 500 euros, at least on the official website. And you could ask yourself the question of choosing one or the other, given that they are only 100 euros apart and offer similar characteristics. Of course, the A55 should be better because it's more expensive, but if you don't really need the improvement offered, you might as well save your money and buy a few accessories, in particular a charger, because in both cases, the smartphones are simply supplied with a USB-C cable, documentation, and a SIM card ejector tool. Moving on to the design, both phones are 8.2mm thick, weighing 213 grams and 209 grams for the other, so I think we can say that the dimensions are the same. Both phones are IP67 and they come in the same colors: blue, night blue, lilac or lime. The positioning of the three photo sensors is also the same, consistent with what we have on the A series with the A05s, A15 or A25. On the other hand, these two models have the advantage of a glass back, giving them a more premium look than the cheaper models in this series, which use plastic. For an even more premium look, the A55 has a metal contour compared with the A35, which has plastic edges. The rest is identical. On the top there is a microphone and a dual SIM or SIM plus micro SD drawer. And on the right hand side, the volume and power button are raised above the rest. On the bottom, two microphones, the USB-C port and a speaker. Stereo sound is also present with the speaker and the earpiece at the ear level. So yes, the A55 has a more premium look thanks to its metal contours, but if you plan to use a protective case, you won't be able to tell the difference between the two. So it's not necessarily what's going to sway the choice in my opinion, as both are pleasant to hold in the end, perhaps a little large depending on what you used to have. As for the screen, there is no real difference here, measuring 6.6 inches in both cases. These are AMOLED screens in Full HD Plus resolution, 120Hz with brightness of up to 1000 nits in automatic mode. What's new this year is that they both use Corning Gorilla Glass Victus Plus for protection. The screen is great in both cases, offering fine detail and contrast, and support HDR10+ video playback for the A55 but not for the A35, which I'm not sure is decisive for most people. Many of you have also pointed out the size of the bezels in those two models, and indeed you can find thinner bezel in this price range from the competition and even on cheaper models, and they also share this drawback. On some of the illustrative images that I used, I still had the screen protector that came with the phone but was not for the right model. I have since removed it, as it was rightly pointed out to me that it was probably a screen protector for a model like the A25. Fortunately, I didn't pay for it, but I'm also showing you other images without the protector, and the screens are therefore identical between the two. In terms of option, you can choose to leave the refresh rate in adaptive mode to vary the speed according to what you're doing, oscillating between 120Hz or 60Hz automatically, or force it to 60Hz to save battery life. For colors, you can choose between a vivid mode and a natural mode. In vivid mode, you can also adjust the white balance, but there are few options available and the screens offer good color anyway. The fingerprint reader is located at the bottom of the screen and is not necessarily the fastest to unlock on the A35. It seems to me a little faster on the A55, probably also due to the latter power advantage. The Samsung A55 is equipped with the Samsung Exynos 1480 processor with 8 or 12 GB of RAM depending on the version, while the Samsung A35 will be equipped with the Exynos 1380 with 6 or 8 GB of RAM. Both are available with 128 or 266 GB of storage, which can be expanded up to 1 TB with microSD. I'm going to show you some benchmarks so that you can judge the difference in power, but to give you a better idea, the A35 uses the same processor that was present last year in the A54, and the 1480 offers around 20% more performance. For example, on Call of Duty Warzone Mobile, you'll be able to play the game at high visual quality and 30 FPS by default on the A55, whereas on the A35, which has the same processor as the A54, it will be on low quality. So there is a real difference on this game and probably on the other games too, but when it comes down to it, everything's fluid on both models and daily usage. But if you think in the longer term, you'll probably be able to keep the A55 for longer periods of time, and Samsung has committed itself to 4 years of OS update and 5 years of security update for these two models. That's more than competitors in this segment generally offer, but less than the S24 series. Both models also use Android 14 with One UI 6.1, the latest version of the system, but they don't get all the AI functions that have been heavily marketed on the S24 series, nor do they get the possibility of using Samsung DeX via the USB-C port, as is the case on the more expensive model, although I don't consider this to be an essential function for most people. In terms of battery life, both phones have a 5000 mAh battery and support a maximum charge of 25 watts, so logically we should have the same things in terms of autonomy, but that's not the case. I used the PCMark application to simulate classic use and to use the battery from 100% to 20%, which enables me to compare these models with exactly the same test, and I obtained 15 hours and 36 minutes on the A55, whereas on the A35 I obtained 11 hours and 49 minutes. That's quite a difference given the same battery capacity. The A55's processor manages power consumption much better and uses less battery. Unfortunately, charging is still equivalent to around 1 hour and 40 minutes to go from 15% to 100%, but I'd like to point out that I was using a 120 watt charger that wasn't from Samsung. Maybe if I would have a Samsung charger, the time could have been reduced if there are some kind of protection mechanism that allowed faster charging with a Samsung charger, but it's really slow compared to Chinese brand with minimum charging speed of 60 watt that goes up to 120 watt in this price range. There is no wireless charging on this series either, which will be on the S series if you want it. For photo and video, we'll have 3 sensors in both cases, an ultra-wide-angle sensor, a main sensor, and a macro sensor. On paper, the main sensor and the macro sensor look identical but are slightly different, 50 megapixel and 5 megapixel. However, the ultra-wide-angle sensor will be different in terms of megapixel, 8 megapixel for the A35 and 12 megapixel for the A55. Another difference is the selfie sensor. The A35 has a 13 megapixel sensor and the A55 a 32 megapixel one. No telephoto lenses here reserved for the S series, and you'll have to use digital zoom lenses to go from 0.2, 0.4 or up to 0.10. The hardware is important, but what matters most is how the smartphone processes these images, and that involves algorithm and the power available. On the ultra-wide angle, the A55 also has a slightly wider field of view, and during my comparison I noticed that it had a little more detail and better contrast, but it can also depend on the situation, the lighting, etc. On the main sensor, I didn't really see any difference between the two, so that's a good point for the A35. Note also that the example and conclusion I've drawn are those I've seen from my test, and that in some situations you may see more or no difference at all, depending on the light, the colors, etc. I looked at some other reviews where some found the photos identical between the two cameras, others where they found the A55 to be better, so there you have it, it can also vary for you. As for the 5 megapixel macro sensor, I didn't see any difference either, but in both cases I would avoid using it. As for the selfie sensor, I have the impression that skin tones are a little better respected on the A55, with the background a little more blurred, but nothing obvious, and it's only when you stop to look at it that you can really see the difference. At night too, the A55's rendering was better on all the sensors, but obviously it's the phone power that will lighten the image, remove as much noise as possible, smooth out certain parts to compensate, and so on. And you can really see the difference between the two in the test I was able to carry out. In video, the A55 has the advantage because you can shoot in 4K on the main sensor, but also on the ultra-wide angle and using the 2x zoom, whereas on the A35 you can only shoot on the main sensor and the rest is Full HD. So as you can see on both of the smartphones, you can film with 4K on the selfie cam, which is always nice because some other brands, even for flagship, don't have 4K selfie cameras, so it's really nice to have it even on the lower price phones. And you can see that the stabilization is pretty good with both phones. To conclude, the Samsung A55 is better than the A35 for only €100 more, which seems logical, but we can see it especially on certain points. More power means it's better if you want to play video game, but it's also useful for processing night photos or filming in 4K on the ultra-wide-angle lens. It also has better battery life, but on the other hand, what is great about the A35 is that it retains the most important point for many people, the screen, the design, a main photo and video sensor that seems identical to me, and with €100 save you can buy a charger, a protective case or even a micro SD card to extend storage. Personally, if I were hesitating between the two phones, I would still go for the A55, even if it means waiting for the price to drop a bit so I can keep it a bit longer. But if you're looking for other alternative, here is a comparison between the Poco X6 Pro and the Poco X6, and here's my review of the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus, and I'll see you in the next video.